Chris, good evening. So let's talk about this. Overall, just a general thought from you. Do you think this is a workable plan? Do you think this is something that we can put our money on?
Well, it is a long-term plan, and it's a roadmap looking at where we are with all the problems at Eskom and where we'd like to move to and be, in the end state. It is a roadmap, but not all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. And I don't think we should expect that. In South Africa, we have a habit of trying to talk things to death and settle every last detail before we start on the plan. No, time is over for that. We need to start this plan. It's a journey, and we need to deal with issues while we're on the road. So I think while one can criticize the plan for not having enough detail, I think the detail can be filled in as we go. That's not to try and whitewash this plan and make it out that it's everything, but we have to make a start. If we don't start now, we're not going to get to where we need to.
And I suppose some of that detail, or the gaping sort of lack of detail, we're hoping we'll hear from the finance minister tomorrow, especially about the debt, because that is the big question.
Indeed, this is a long-term plan, and it doesn't address the immediate crisis, which is twofold: the financial crisis, the debt problem, and also the operational issues, the load-shedding problem. But certainly this plan is a necessary requirement. The financial community are looking and saying, you've got to have a plan, and the plan you have has got to be credible. But that's not enough. We need to now look at the short-term, immediate plan to deal with the debt crisis, and that we're hoping to hear tomorrow.
All right, well, let's hear from James McKay. He is also an energy expert from Energy Partners. He's in our Cape Town studio for us. James, good evening, and thanks for joining the discussion. I just want to hear from you about what you think of Pravin Gordhan's plan for Eskom. I spoke earlier to economic analyst Bonke Dumisa. He says that the timing was all wrong. We should have heard this plan after we heard from Tito Mboweni tomorrow. Do you agree, especially in terms of that debt?
So yes, of course. I mean, the debt side of things is very important to address. But I think from our perspective at Energy Partners, there's a piece that is fundamentally missing from what this is. What was presented was primarily a business rescue plan for Eskom, which is very important and very needed. So no criticism there. But the private sector is missing from this conversation. There is enormous funds available in the private sector, amazing companies such as Energy Partners and others who produce outsourced utilities for our economy. And there's technology in there that we should be leveraging. So while we're presenting a business rescue plan from an Eskom perspective, what we're not talking about is actually the more immediate fast tracking of how do we get our energy spread across our country solved. How do we provide power more immediately to companies, to Eskom as well? It's part of their own plan, where we, as the private sector, could be producing enormous amounts of power and pushing that into the grid. So from our perspective, it was like only one side of the picture was put on the table today. We would hope that the engagement with the private sector would speed up. We should be fast-tracking this process. A business turnaround plan from an Eskom perspective is going to take years. And this country doesn't have years. And our economy doesn't have years. So from our perspective, it's what I've just put forward. We, as the private sector in this context, look at this and say, why would we not be engaging in the immediate fast-tracking of the RP? Those types of the discussions are from our perspective, what's needed as a joint component to what was mentioned today by Pravin Gordhan.
Chris, I suppose the other question for ordinary consumers would be, what does this mean for me in the long term, other than that I will not have, hopefully not have load shedding or have to deal with it? And who's going to pay? What is this going to cost me at the end of the day to make this plan work?
Look, from a consumer point of view, the big picture restructuring it probably means very little to the consumer. But in the longer term, what is the intention of this? It is to to have an industry that can produce electricity efficiently, at least cost, and reliably. That is what the consumer sees and what the consumer wants. The technical details of how to get there, the business details, the structural issues have to be dealt with.
Yeah.
We have a problem. We cannot continue like we are. One of the biggest threats that I see to this plan is what level of political buy-in and support has this got from the president,
Yeah.
from the cabinet, the top six, the NEC, the party,
Yeah.
because, and that includes Labour, the SACP, and the partners of government. And if there is no consensus, or if there is insufficient consensus, this will become another point of argument and dispute, and when there is no consensus, it's very difficult to move forward. So I think government now has to really get stakeholder support to get buy-in to this plan in order to move fast on it.
Well, and James, I mean, there was mention, or there was talk of an energy mix. Now, you say that there hasn't been enough, or there hasn't been any sort of involvement with the likes of independent or alternative producers of power. So when it comes to the plan to divide or group the plants into 3 big clusters, do you see opportunities there for the likes of you to actually be included?
Yes, look, I mean, it's been a consistent narrative from the private sector to say, involve us in the planning, involve us in the strategy. As just to back up what Chris was saying a second ago, there is so much at risk here from a political point of view. And when that comes into the picture, it sows doubt in the minds of the private sector, consumers at large. And so what would be very useful would be to almost become a more meaningful partner in the strategy and the timelines around solving this problem, because it's not just an ESCOM problem. This is a countrywide problem. It's going to affect everyone in all of our contexts. So from an energy partner perspective, and any other company that is exactly like ours, because there are others. There's an entire world of alternative energy out there. We should be part of the strategy, and we should be part of that discussion now, not in 5 years' time or when the next press conference is held. That should be happening right now. And I think that from all of the signals that President Ramaphosa has been sending, which I think are the right ones, he's quite serious about solving these problems. So I would say that that should be an important part of bringing this to a more practical and meaningful solution to the country.
All right, and those concerns coming through there from James. He's an energy expert at Energy Partners. Chris, just a final question for you. While we get to this, we still have Medupi, Kusile to deal with. We still have all those municipalities that owe millions. We can't just put all of this. Yes, a big part of it falls on Eskom's shoulders, but we're also not playing the game. And then what about Medupi and Kusile and, you know, white elephants?
These are some of the missing details in the plan. Nothing in the plan that I've seen addresses this distribution problem, the problem with the last mile, the municipal distribution sector, and not just the municipal distribution sector, the Eskom distribution sector, because it is just as functional. Eskom's arrear debt from its direct sales in Soweto are as big as all the defaulting municipalities put together. So it's not a municipal problem. I think one of the biggest threats, and it's been alluded to by your other guest, is that we are not diversified enough. We've got all our eggs in the Eskom basket. We need a much more diversified generation sector, electricity sector, and we also need to diversify away from coal. We have got way too much over-dependence on coal, something like 80%. Fortunately, the IRP addresses these things. It is diversifying away from Eskom and diversifying away from coal. And that's a really important strategy. And I think that's where the private sector can see its a growing participation in the electricity.
It's so funny that we hear about it being a monopoly and we shouldn't have it. And here again, like you say, we put everything into Eskom rather than looking at what is outside.
We actually have to diversify away from this monopoly.
Yeah, thanks very much, Christian. And then thanks to James McKay, my guest in Cape Town.